So this is Vayakhel, and what you're looking at here is the back of my patio here in Boca Raton. We have a beautiful pool. We don't use it too much, but it looks pretty. And it makes a nice little scene. So we're kind of a little bit surrounded here. There's a park behind us, which is very nice. And we moved into Boca Raton. Now there's a big push. A lot of people are coming into Boca Raton now. And we were here actually when this was a small house in Boca Raton. So today we're going to learn the Zohar. Today the Zohar is for the second day of the week of the Parshas Vayakhel. The Zohar went through a little bit of Bilam the last time when we learned it. Let's go over and see what it looks like now. So I'll take this thing up like this, flip it around, and see what the light is like in this position. I'm really not sure. It sure is a lot darker. But I hope that this is not too much of a trouble for anybody that's coming over here to look at the Zohar. So, where exactly would we be? So here's the beginning of Vayakhel. We just started talking about Bilam HaRasha. Let's go down and see if we can see it and see if the light is good enough for us to be able to learn. So now we're going over to the Zohar, and we're going to find ourselves on page Kuf Pei Dalet in the Zohar of Parshas Vayakhel. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to read the top, try to understand the words at the top, get a feeling for the language of Rebbe Shimon. So, and we'll do as much of the matuk as we can, time provided. So it says like this. Right here, Kagav the da asher karcha b'derech. Now we had this phrase that had to do with the tumah of Amalek. Karcha lashon carry. We said that yesterday. Azmin legabach, he's waiting for you. Haku chiv yibishu, he is a snake, a wicked snake. Le'ela l'sa'avalach b'kol sitrin. His job is to make you torment. When he talks about this, I feel that he's talking about. He's always talking about sexual averence. The ultimate seduction. If it wasn't because you had a strong man, a person who was very brave and very powerful, reaching into the spiritual worlds where the fight is also going on. Moshe representing the sun and Yeshua representing the moon. They're fighting the war. Lo Yachilu Yisrael, the Jewish people would not have been able to overcome Amalek. Again, kach, for this reason, he took this hate along with him for generations. My time, but what's the reason? Begin to chashav because what he wanted to do was uproot the concept of bris from its place. Begin kach b'kadati. For this reason, I am revisiting him now. The bekida dehar taman is isramiz, because in that visitation that we're mentioning over here, the askaim kadisha, it's all about the concept of the sexual purity of the Jewish people. Tochazi, come and see. Machsev, what is written? V'yomish ul el hakeni shul said to the Canaanite, Man Kani, what Kani are you talking about? So the Zohar says, Man Kani, da Yisrael. Ki man yehiv b'nei Yisrael hachol lebecheva diyurach b'Amalek. So who is it that came around and brought Yisrael over here to become the neighbor of Amalek? Because we always thought that the descendants of Yisrael, that they were in Yericho. But this is what written we have in Shoft in this Rebbe. B'nei Kani chaysid Moshe, the children of Yisrael, who was the father-in-law of Moshe, Allah Meir Hatzmarim, they came up from the city of dates, which is Yericho, as B'nei Yehuda to the children of Yehuda, Midbar Yehuda in the encampment of Yehuda. Because Allah B'taman, and as they were going up from there, Shara B'tachuma de Amalek, then they actually placed themselves in a position where they're near the border of Amalek. Until that time that Shaul Amalek came, and he warned them to get away from the border of Amalek. Begin the because of the time that there's judgments coming around and that there's evil people in the world. So those people, the Chassidim, the people who are really meritorious, the Mishtafke Benaichu that we find amongst the Jewish people, they will be caught in their sins, and this is what we have discussed. Now we'll go back over some of that tomorrow, but right now we're going to come over here and look at the Matak B'Devash and see what he's got to say. So now we're going to take a look at the Matak B'Devash, and I think there's a big secret in here. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be for me to find it, but I'm going to try. He said, Kagab the door, for example, like this. Back to the pasuk from yesterday. This tumor was waiting for you along the ride. And the tail, there will be a tail for you. In other words, the leftovers, the people who are weak. All the people who are weak, will be winding behind you. Now, what does it mean by weak people? Does it mean that they weren't big and strong like LeBron James or something like that? What does it mean? Pirusho ki Amalek, that this is what it wants to say. Amalek Azmin the Gabach, he's waiting there for you. Hahu Chidyabisha, he is that serpent, the enticing, seductive serpent. La'ela l'sa'avalacha. So he's up above in the spiritual worlds as well. He has a root there. His job there is to make you Tomei. Bakal Citron, everywhere. That is in the spiritual world, in the physical world. We heard that language yesterday. So he's Hazmidacha, he's waiting for you as a Nachash Aron, Ha'omen L'Malach, who's up above. This is talking about the Samach Mem, which is the Malach. It's the main force of evil. The Tomei Osachobach Ace, all what he wants to do is make you Tomei. He wants to seduce you into very bad behavior. The Moshe La'ela, if it wasn't for the fact that Miloshe is Chazek Moshe La'Malach, the Kasharas Spheros, in order to be able to tie the spheros together, Kadei Shalo Lita and Makum the Haklipa, the Konis of the Kedusha, so that he'd say it again because we heard it in the Shir this morning in the Sifra Ditzniuta, that Zer Anpin has the ability to close up and to protect. So this Chazek Moshe Lamala, he was working up above the kasher to tie together as a spheros. What happens if you can get them all working together? Kadosh Lita and Makom lahaklipa lekonis of the kedusha. So there's no entrance for the klipa to come into kedusha, because then we will turn. We're actually seeing some of this in the United States today. If you want to see it, you have what is good is bad, and what is bad is good, and everything gets mixed up when the klipa comes in. Yoshua Lasat, and then yet Yoshua Nischazek Lamata, he was holding on and being very, very powerful down below. Let's say to go out Lilchom Milchamas Hashem, in order to actually fight a bloody war. Levato Koyach HaTuma, in order to be able to nullify the power of the Tuma Shel Amalek, Shebedeh Hechlish as Koycha, because the war itself will weaken them. To spill their blood, you have to kill them. Lule Zos, if it wasn't the fact that Yeshua and Moshe were there, Lo Yechila Yisrael, the Jewish people would have been seduced and wiped out. Lo Yecholin Yisrael La'ama B'negdo. Begin Kach, for this reason, not there Kuchabri who how could devolve the doggy. So therefore Hashem planted in us and has taught us in every generation. He planted Sina, Seid, inside of us for Amalek the Davidaros, for generations and generations. Now over here, it's just interesting. I know there could be a lot of different facets to Amalek and the kind of evil that he works, but it doesn't sound like Hitler. I mean, it maybe ultimately is Hitler, and maybe that the Jews were drawn into such a low level of behavior that it actually drew the terrible acts of the Second World War. So he says, but we hate this from every generation. Now, he's talking about the seduction, the ability of Amalek to present himself as a seduction that you want. So therefore we need to fight it. My time, what's the reason? Mahatam. The Omer ki afilu shelo choya yochel lahapek zimamo mikol mikol. So even though he's not able to actually poison you directly, but there's an atmosphere that he is able to create. He says the mama mikol mikol im kol zera begarim pagam baosius vav k. But in any case, in the world of Atzilut, he is capable as a result of the actions that he does in the atmosphere he creates to be able to make a separation between the letters Vav and the letter K of the Tetragrammaton. Shalashem Havaya. Begin the Chashiv La'akrab as Kaima Ba'asre. Because what he really wants to do, and let me see if I've got this so it can still be seen. Let me move this back, or what do I have to do here? 1 second. There we go. So he says, my time. What's the reason? Mahatam. Even though that he can't really poison us like he's really capable of doing. Picture some of the worst possible things that are in our culture. They're available to us all the time, and they influence everything we do. Particularly, and what really the war is going on now, we haven't noticed it, is over sexual perversion. Who dominates? The lesbian, gay community who are in all political parties. This is a perversion of the bracha of Hashem. So all you're going to get from this, I hope not. So we'll try to fight by learning Torah Kenegdo. But it doesn't bring goodness. So he says, even though that he's not able to poison you directly, he could create an atmosphere which is garam pagam ba'ozias vav k. In other words, the kedusha of male and female. They attack this. Shall Hashem Havaya. Because that's the part that really is affected by us first. Begin the chashiv la'akrab as us kaima ma'asre. What is it that Amalek really wants to do? And you have to think about where Amalek is in our society, in the world in general. Because now you're painting a picture where it's not saying the violent person. That may become later. This is saying the person who seduces you into the into the world of the worst part of our culture. The fisha hashiv la'akar as osa bris mivakoma, because he wants to take the sign of the bris from its place in kedusha, and the shiratza lahafres as yesod shuhus vov, so that the flow of bracha from up above will be cut off from malchus. He wants to separate the letter vav min malchus shehi os hey. Kamasha Kosaki Yad al Case Yak. He puts his hand. This is my interpretation. They say maybe a different one. I like this one. Hope I could be heard of this one. He said al Case Ka, that Yak. He says that the hand there on the throne, in other words, that holds the Shefa, puts his hand in there and wants to destroy it. He says Shepirusha Chazal She'ein Hashem Shalem, because the name is not complete. Until his name is completely and totally wiped out. For this reason, so Kodesh Baruch Hu says, therefore, I have revisited on Amalek what he did. It doesn't say I remembered him, that he's going to actually physically touch him. Now let's understand what he said. He says that the lover Zechira, remembering, is a thought. Shehu b'zer anpin. That's the thought, that in other words, the inspiration, but the actual act, Bekida, will be carried out by Malchus, Shehi Malchus, who is actually the designator. The Hataman, because in other words, more specific, and the attack will be more specific. The Hataman, Kisham b'milit Bekida, because over there, in the idea of revisiting, Israel is Raza da Oskaima Kadesha. There is a remez over there to the concept of the bris. Now, what is that? I didn't get this exactly, so let's hear what the Mata Midrash says. Let me bring it back to where it should be. Nirmaz b'kolacha yisod shehu sod os bris kodesh. So he says there is a reference here, an incorporation of the Yesod, which is the place where the Bris Kodesh is. That even if the root of this visitation, Hu Malchus, is going to come through Malchus. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to act against Amalek, and he's going to take place through Malchus, who has been the mostly attacked by Amalek. Even so, if he's able to make a separation between the Yesod and Malchus, became Goram Pagam b'Malchus, he causes a tremendous flaw in Malchus, like a lesion. And that Pagam will not be rebuilt until the Kodesh Baruch himself will wipe out Vayakhel, that is, he'll erase and nullify Shorsho Shal Amalek, the roots of Amalek, Milamala, from up above, Vanafav Malamata, and his branches from down below. Amen. And that's going to be the shir right now. I hope it came out.